Hey everyone, it's Andy, and another UX showcase from the Secure Vulnerability Management team. Today I want to talk a little bit about validating and prioritizing your roadmap and how we are achieving that. So, vulnerability management just moved to viable last winter, um, which we did so by focusing primarily on the security workflows and a little bit on the dashboards. Really trying to hone in on the needs of the application security engineer or analyst. Um, but getting to complete is going to be a different story. I know we'll probably have a 12 to 18-month timeline, but the areas of focus are varied, right? It could be multiple performers, jobs to be done we haven't even targeted or begin researching yet, as well as kind of this automation or any other of these categories that are kind of new to us or new to us in the space for security. So planning then for the year, we wanted to start out by generating UX themes. So we looked back at the opportunities from that last CM scorecard, which moved us to viable. So the themes here are, challenges measuring team and application performance, challenging managing large amounts of vulnerabilities, and challenges with repeating multiple tasks. And then I reached out to my PM and kind of asked, like, what are your 10 posts? What are your pillars for this year? What's being kind of like driven through product? And Matt had mentioned enterprise readiness, market leadership, growth, and scalability. So we got together and started thinking about how to kind of peanut butter and chocolate these into some UX themes for us on vulnerability management. We came up with these four. Vulnerability management at scale, configurability and flexibility, deeper lifecycle capabilities, and vulnerability prevention. But let's just get out of this presentation and go check those out. There's a link here if you would like. I already have a link. So looking at how these themes are laid out, we have the primary themes here: vulnerability management at scale, all the way down to configurability and flexibility, etc. And we have kind of the objective of each theme, followed by the associated job family. So we are using the jobs to be done framework, but we're taking the core job and putting that in this issue or in these sections because it's easier to move around than bringing in the entire jobs to be done statement. And with our kind of altitude, we have a big job that ladders to a little job. And we're kind of seeing two little jobs that ladder to two big jobs here in this vulnerability management at scale theme. And these are aligned with the areas of focus and opportunities. These are also, you could call these features as well, which are broken out into the sections of the product that they kind of impact. And each one has a link to an issue if it came from a customer, where the insights may be the validation type that's required or that it's currently in, and just like a swag on the UX weight. And these were, again, from CM scorecard, customers, internal requests, internal customers from the AppSec side, and from our backlog. So we didn't really generate a lot of net new ideas here. We really just, everyone knows how deep their backlog can get. So we wanted to make sure that we're kind of working with what's existing at the moment. But as you can see, there's a ton of stuff here. And prioritizing this into the year would be a big challenge. So we have thought of a methodology that I've used in the past successfully, and it is called the Kano method. And what this does is it allows you to prioritize your features based on your user sentiment towards the functionality and performance that feature gives them. And we have gone down this route with 7 features. If you are thinking about doing this method, I wouldn't do any more than this to start with. This is a survey. As with any survey, the writing is the hardest part, and we always have to be conscious of the participant fatigue. So when you begin asking too many questions, you start getting either incomplete responses, or people just are just ticking off boxes. So a brief walkthrough of Kano. I would definitely suggest everyone go and check this out if they're interested. What this does is it will create buckets in which the features you are analyzing will be kind of fall into. And it helps you make more informed decisions on what to bring forward or pull down in your backlog. And the process is a little nuanced, so I won't dive too deeply into it. But at a high level, you are going to be, for each feature, you just need a description and a mockup, as well as 3 questions. You'll be asking a functional question. For example, we're talking about exporting video times. This is just from another guide to how to do the Kano analysis. So if exporting any video takes under 10 seconds, how do you feel? And then the second question is the inverse. If exporting videos takes longer than 10 seconds, how do you feel? And getting those 2 wordings is really important. Oftentimes, we're not talking about the absence of a feature by saying, if you could not export videos, how would you feel? We're talking about how the feature currently exists. So in this example, there is an export video feature, but it just takes a long time, as opposed to there's no exporting video feature. And when you're setting this up too, it's really important to keep in mind who you are going to be targeting. As you can imagine, you're asking about features with a broad audience. It's going to be a survey. So it's good to have those segments or user cohorts kind of in mind. One, so that you know when to start your analysis, when you've hit 20 participants complete responses in each one of these cohorts or segments. And another is analyzing just the data in general. As you can see here, we've got individual contributors as one of our primary cohorts, which will then be broken down into the department, as well as another primary cohort, manager and team leads. These user types will have different responses based on their needs. So if we're talking about a feature that benefits managers or team leads or people who need to measure and track performance, they're going to respond differently than individual contributors who are more focused on executing their day-to-day tasks of managing vulnerabilities and triaging them with ease. So we want to make sure that we're kind of looking at this data not as one set, but based on the segments we've created. So let's see, we're getting pretty close to time, but let's jump in. I'll show you how we've kind of started this. We have 4 surveys. So one is the link we're sending direct to customers. They are all the same survey, by the way. The one we're sending direct to customers is just a different link. It's just a little easier for us to compartmentalize and distribute that link without worry of other people taking it. And we have our on-site collector, which we just put up just in the vulnerability management areas on .com. That's been up for just a little under a week. And we sent out a survey internally as well. And we separated the internal team out because we also have kind of an assumption that the internal team may be using our tools and features differently, or we can validate that assumption. But this doesn't really harm the analysis doing it this way, because you can just download all of the basically Excel files, and put them into one and start your analysis based on the group. Also retakes as well. If you're sending them direct to customers and something happened, you can set up a retake survey, but there's Qualtrics docs for that. And then looking at just the formatting, right, that should be helpful too. You've got your intro and screener. These are the same for everyone. Instructions, though this survey is weird. It's, as you can imagine, it's kind of asking these two inverse questions. It's good to just prime and set the expectations of the participants. And then you get to your features. When you're describing the feature, talk about the benefit as much as possible. It can be more conceptual as well. And when you're thinking about providing an asset or the mock-ups, these don't have to be production ready. The goal is really just to sell the concept or provide enough background on the concept that it makes sense visually. We don't have some of these patterns today. That's not a big deal. It's really about, does this explain grouping in a mock-up? And then going down to the questions, we're talking about these specifically. Some Kano analyses like to say, if you had this feature, how would you feel? If you did not have this feature, how would you feel? There are wordings out there like that. You don't get great results with that, primarily because people don't know how to answer those questions with the natural responses we have. So we have kind of tailored our questions to be more specific to the feature itself. It takes a little bit more time, but you get better results. So for grouping, the example is, if you could manage groups of vulnerabilities, how would you feel? And the dysfunctional question, if you could only manage vulnerabilities individually, how would you feel? So if grouping is not in the product, it's not the absence of having grouping. It's what the user can currently do today, which is managing vulnerabilities individually. When you ask a user if you could not manage vulnerabilities in groups, I think that you see responses that are kind of all over the board because you don't know how to process that question. You're like, I would like it, I guess. It's a really weird answer. So by kind of just stating, if you could only do what you can do today, unless it's a very unique feature that is so net new that we don't even have a capability that matches it, I would follow this paradigm. And then it's followed up by an importance question. This helps us stack rank these as well, if there's any like close relationship in the segments. And kind of wrapping up here, pro tip, if you are doing multiple surveys that kind of feed into one kind of analysis, you can name your questions. I also think naming your questions is just beneficial in general. You get your grouping functional, grouping dysfunctional, and when you go through and you're creating a report, you know what those questions are versus question 29 or some number that Qualtrics gives you. So we haven't finished fielding yet. In wrapping up, we have a total of 30 qualified responses, that is completes, and I've also set a filter for people who have answered that they do use one of the security features in the screener. Sorry. And we have this report that is generated from Qualtrics, bringing in those 3 surveys. The one survey that you saw was retakes. There's 0 completes in that. But if there are, and one day we would probably bring them in here. And this is not how we're going to analyze the data, but I did aggregate this report because I will be out. So my PM can kind of track and monitor, as well as share this with the UX researcher coming in. And then they can use this as pretty much this page to know that we've hit our cohort limits, and we can go ahead and download the data, which is a whole different UX showcase on analyzing Kano. Not to scare you off, it's not terrible. It's just going to be, it just takes a little bit of time. So with that, I'll kind of end there and how we have been doing our prioritization. And hopefully when I get back after paternity leave, we'll have prioritized roadmap. Right? All right. Thank you.